Hey everyone, welcome back. So while I'm waiting for the fasteners and bearings and everything for my camera jib build to arrive so I can get back to that, I've decided to get back to this. This is a project where I turn this into this using this. So, where I left off last time is I took this model made by someone called Sorpix and I hollowed out the bottom of it to be used on the RC car. And I printed this. This is obviously way too small because that's like a 1/16 scale RC car, and it's got about an 8-inch wheelbase. And I like this. It looks really good. This looks like a CJ-7. And hollowing it out wasn't that tough, but for me to use this, I really want the windshield and the front windows to be kind of clear, clear-ish. I'd love to have the hood open because the battery in that RC is under the hood. I don't really care about the back windows or the back tailgate. I'll make bumpers and taillight housings and spare tire carrier. But before I really start to work anymore on this, I thought I would try that model. And I said, this one is made by somebody called Sorpix, and I'll put a link to it below. But I thought before I go any further on this one, I'd try that one called Carrosserie. And I'll put a link to that one below as well. It's the opposite of this. This is one piece for the most part. The Carrosserie one is like, I don't know, 40 or 50 pieces, and it's a jigsaw puzzle. So before I go any further, I thought I would print out some of the side pieces that have the wheelbase and figure out the scale. And that's these here. Now I gotta mention, before I did this, I loaded this front fender piece into Orca Slicer, and my print bed looked like a postage stamp, little bitty tiny square down here. So these are like full size. I measured this is like for a full-size Jeep CJ-7. So I had to scale it down to 10%, which is what I did. And you can see it here. That is considerably bigger than my little RC car. This would be for something that has about a 10-inch wheelbase, and mine has an 8-inch wheelbase, but that gave me a scale. What I did next was load them back into Orca Slicer and scale them at 0.8. And then I glued them together, and I got this. That's these, and I glued them together, and you can see I did my typical glue job, but I got my wheelbase correct. I now have my wheelbase at 8 inches. As you can see, the wheelbase on this is now just about perfect. But I don't want to glue all these pieces together. I suck at gluing. The first bump I hit, or the first time I roll it over, it's all going to fall apart and it's going to look like crap. So that's when I loaded these pieces into Fusion. Well, I've got Fusion 360 open, and before we begin I want to mention something, and that is that my main monitor is now a large curved ultra widescreen monitor, and I have to size everything weird, up into a small window in the upper left hand corner to fit into the window in OBS Studio, which is over on my side window, and Fusion doesn't really seem to work well with that. And I gotta keep watching it closely to see that everything is on the screen. And you can see I've made the Fusion window as small as it can go, and I still can't fit it all into the area that I need to. So you just got to bear with me. I could reverse it and put OBS Studio over on the widescreen and Fusion over on the small side monitor, but then I've got to turn my head 90 degrees to one side in order to see the anyway, you get it. I suck at it, and I'll just do my best, and we'll all get along. So first thing we want to do is we want to get the first one of these mesh pieces into Fusion. And I want to show you a problem when you're working with mesh pieces that other people design. I'm not beating anybody up here, and this could be Fusion's fault, I don't know, but let's get a piece in here. So we're going to say insert mesh, and we're going to come in and we're going to pick, we have to say select from my computer, and this is a tedious process. Maybe there's some way to streamline it, I don't know, but if there is, I haven't figured it out. So I am going to say CJ-7 front CJ-7 fender front co-driver, because this is the passenger side, and I'll tell you why I'm working with the passenger side a little later. And I'm just going to say okay to this screen, and here is this part, and I know it doesn't look anything like, really, you think that looks like a CJ-7 fender, but remember, this is the passenger side. So, and this had me thrown for a bit. All of this is under the hood. This is the outside of the vehicle. I know it's weird looking, but so after we have the mesh in, also another thing about these pieces is these are full-size vehicle pieces. He says scale them down to 10% for an RC car. Well, you know, that's if you're running a 10th scale RC. Mine is smaller than that, so I have to scale them down to 8%. So first thing we're going to do, I know that's a lot of stuff that doesn't have to do with the process I'm trying to show you. Oh, and it wants me to save here. So let's just save this to get it out of the way. And let's call this carossery test. And we're going to save it to my stuff. Save. All right, now we at least got that out of the way. Okay, so we're going to click the mesh tab up above. And now we're going to come to modify and say convert mesh. I got to find it again. I've only done this a million times now. Convert mesh. We're going to say we want to convert this one. We're going to say okay. And because there aren't many triangles in this, it does it really, really quickly. If there's over 10,000 triangles, it warns you that it might take a while. And be aware, if there's many more than 10,000, it can take a while. So there's our first part here. But you know what? I could scale it right now, but it's easier, in my opinion, and streamlines it a little bit to wait till we have it all together, all the parts we want together, and then scale it as a whole. So we're going to insert another mesh. And now here's where something interesting comes in. And this had me going for a while because I couldn't figure out what was happening. So we're going to do the same thing, select for my computer. This next one is called the middle, fender middle, something middle. Okay, here we go. Side co-driver middle. Okay, so this is the next piece we want. I'm going to say open, and we're just going to say okay. And we are now going to, we're still on our mesh tab. So I'm going to say modify and convert mesh. And we're going to convert this one, and we're going to say okay. And let's move it. All right, so now I got it there. And now we want to assemble these two pieces. Let's rotate it around so it makes more sense. Can I rotate this fusion? There we go. Okay, so this makes more sense, but I want to show you before I go any further something that fusion did to me which I didn't understand, and it took me a while to figure out. Let's insert another mesh. Let's insert the driver's side part of that middle instead of the passenger side. So insert mesh from my computer. We're going to insert that. Whoops, I don't want to rename it. I want to click it and say open. Okay, so there's the part. Now, I'll say okay to it. Now, if you look at it, it looks exactly like this one, right? Looks exactly like this part, except it's a mirror image. It's just the other side of the vehicle. You can look at the triangles. The triangles are all the same. Everything's identical. It's a bloody mirror image. But if I try and convert this piece, if I say modify, convert mesh on this piece, it immediately warns me there's more than 10,000 triangles. The other side didn't do that. Why is that? Let's get this driver's side again, because I want to show you sometimes why things happen that make no sense, that you don't understand and drive you crazy. Okay, so let's go back and get this part again, and let me show you the weird thing that I ran into that confused me for a while, and it might confuse you too. And I think if I show it to you, maybe it will help you if you try and do this. So let's go back and let's get that first part again. And there we go. That's that same one. So let's take a look at these, because I found this to be kind of interesting. So here's the one that wouldn't convert. If I say modify and convert mesh and click on this one, it tells me there's more than 10,000 triangles. But if I say modify convert mesh on this one, it doesn't say it, and it will just go ahead and do it. And trust me, I've tried doing this one. I've let it sit for 10 minutes and it hasn't actually done the conversion. So let's take a better look at these. Let's right click on this one and let's say properties. Now under properties, we come down to mesh. It's got 32,000 triangles in it. 32,234 triangles in it. Okay, that is more than 10,000. A lot more than 10,000. But if I come to this other one, this one that did convert already, and I right click on it and I say properties, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to come to mesh. It has 696. 696 versus 32,000 plus. That's a big damn difference. And yet look at the parts. It's the same part. It's a mirror image. It's the same exact part, just a mirror image. There's no way there's 32,000 triangles in this part, but Fusion thinks there is. And it's not really going to let me work on it easily with that many triangles in it. And if I go up to modify and I say reduce, that doesn't work either. It just gives me an error message. So there's something going on with this part that Fusion doesn't like. Anyway, I just wanted to show you that because it drove me crazy for a while, because I thought I practiced this yesterday and I thought I had it figured out, and I came today and it wouldn't work. It's because I was using the driver side parts instead of the co-driver side parts. So anyway, that's my sad story. I'm just going to Control Z out of these parts because I don't want to work with them. So let's go back, because I can just mirror image this inside Fusion, or for that matter, I can mirror image it on the in a slicer. So let's get my last piece in here, and we're going to say insert a mesh, and we're going to go back to my computer, and we are going to, this is side rear, open. Let's move it out of the way there, and we're going to say okay. And now we're going to convert that. So modify, once again, we're on the mesh tab, convert. I said remove by accident. I didn't want to do that. Modify, convert mesh. After a while of doing this, it will start to make you crazy, trust me. And we're going to say okay, and we have no problems with that one either. All right, so now we want to join these into one so that I can print them as one part instead of having to glue the three parts together. Those of you guys don't mind gluing stuff and have good luck with glue, more power to you. Print them out separately and glue them. I mean, if you're on an Ender 3 and you are trying to make this 1/10 scale, you are going to have to print these mostly separately. You can put two of these together, but at 1/10 scale, that's not going to work. At least putting all three of them together won't work. So let's assemble them. We're going to say assemble, joint, and it's going to ask us, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot something. We have to first convert these into components. So we have to come to body, body's over here on the left, and we have to click on each one of these and say create components from bodies. And we're going to do it again, create components from bodies, and create components from bodies. Okay, because you can't assemble bodies, you can only assemble components in Fusion. So now that we have three components, we're going to say assemble and joint. We're going to leave joint set to rigid. For now, we're just going to leave all these alone, and we're going to pick our first spot. And I am going to pick, if there is a curved surface, try not to pick it. I'm going to pick this upper corner right here. Can you see that? Right there. And now I'm going to come around to this piece, and I'm going to pick that same corner, or the opposite one, and it's going to assemble it. And we're going to say okay. Okay. And now we have an assembled part. That is now an assembly. Now, if we want this not to be able to be taken apart, we can make it a rigid group. But let's do this back one here first. So we're going to do the same thing. Assemble, joint, and When I can make this full screen on my big monitor, I don't have the problem of these little windows always being in the way. But right here I do. So I'm going to pick this point here, and then I'm going to zoom around, and I am going to pick this same point right back here, and it's going to assemble. And we're going to say okay. All right, so now I have a single part out of those three pieces. Let me rotate this around so it right side up. So now what I want to do, before I do anything else with this, I want to make them a rigid group. So we're going to say assemble, and we're going to say rigid group. Because if I were to put, say, a floor piece in and try and connect a floor piece to this, it could very well decide to yank this piece out of my assembly and move it over to the floor. But if I make this a rigid group, they will all stay together. So we're going to say assemble, rigid group, and we're going to pick components. We're going to pick this one, and this one. Rigid 2 constrained selected components, continue, okay, and this one. And we're going to say include child components, there aren't any, so it doesn't matter. And we're going to say okay. All right, so this is now a rigid group. This will stay in one piece until Fusion decides it wants to do something else, which is, well, it's Fusion. What do you do? It has rules of its own. All right, now that they're all converted and connected together with joints in a rigid group, we need to scale it because, like I say, this is scaled to be a full-size vehicle. So we're going to come up to modify and scale. We're going to select the pieces we want to scale. And now we're going to go from scale factor 1 to 0.08 because I know I need an 8% size. And we're going to say okay. And there is our scaled part. And that is how you convert a mesh to bodies, and then from bodies to components, and then assemble them and make them rigid. And we can now print this as a single part, and we won't have to glue these pieces together. I have done the same thing with the floor here. Even though I may not use the floor, this is the exact same procedure. Insert the mesh, and there's three pieces to this front firewall piece, this bottom middle piece, and then the rear floor back end area before it leads to the rear box, which I'm also going to put on. I kind of stopped here because I'm not even sure I'm going to be using this, but I might, but we'll see. Anyway, now that I have this done, let's go ahead and let's print it, and let's compare it to what it would look like if I glued it. So let's take a look at these pieces I've made and printed. And I've printed some other pieces of this model just to kind of try and give myself an idea of how all this stuff goes together. So here are the two, well, in this case, three pieces that I put together. You can see I glued this one in. I glued it with super glue, and it's glued fairly well, but I'm a mess when it comes to gluing, which is pretty obvious. I'm sure all of you could do a better job at it than I can, but that's the whole point. I can't. And then here's the one that came out of Fusion that's just one piece, and of course it's pretty solid. About the only problem I'm really seeing is for some reason right here looks like it wasn't solid down on the bed. And also be aware this is really cheap filament, and I printed a hood, and the hood prints standing up because of this indentations in here, and I printed a grill, and I fear that the way this is made in here, he intends the grill to be glued into the hood, which is of course not how a CJ-7 works. Somebody did make this and put it on an RC frame, and it looks pretty good. The fender flare goes on the outside, and the hood sits about like that. So even putting pieces together like this, it's still a jigsaw puzzle. I'm once again going back to where I'm thinking this may be the best plan for this. Go into Fusion, get rid of the front glass and the two side glass pieces, and maybe chop it in half right in front of the windshield so it can be printed in two pieces. Because otherwise I'm going to have to print it on the Alpha YZ20 instead of the FlashForge A5M. I don't know. Anyway, guys, that's what I was just trying to show you, how to assemble like 3 pieces like this into a single piece in Fusion. Certainly looks better and certainly will be better for me because I don't have to glue it. Anyway, I'm going to work on this some more. I have spent hours goofing around with this stuff, fooling with it, thinking about it, trying to figure out what I want to do. And I'm going to spend a few hours more at it. So I will let you know, and we'll be back and we'll figure this out. Anyway, thanks for watching. Catch you in the next one. Bye for now.